So I came out today with the intention of installing this heads-up display and a DVR that I bought for the 76. The dashboard is kind of hidden, or not hidden, but in the shadows when you're in bright sunlight. It's hard to see the speedometer. So I happened to see this online, and I thought, that sounds like a good idea if I can have a heads-up display, and it'll also train me to look there in my 2015, which has it, but I seldom use it because I'm in such a habit of looking just at the dashboard. So first thing I was going to do is try to figure out how can I replace this accessory plug, I'll call it, that goes into what used to be a cigarette lighter, but lately in cars they're not cigarette lighters, they're just accessory plugs. My intent was thinking that this was just two wires, but no, they had to put a USB cable on it. And the thing about the USB cable, input is 12 to 24 volts, but output I can't read it on this one, but on the DVR the output is 5 volts. I don't know if you can see this. Actually, it doesn't even have it on this label, but it is on the plug, which means that I can't do what I was hoping to do, which was to just replace this thing and just hardwire it into the car so that whenever the car gets turned on, the camera or the heads-up display speedometer, I think I forgot to mention that is just a speedometer. But this says input DC 8 to 24 volt, output DC 5 volts, 1.5 amps. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but so I can't just cut this wire and wire it into the car because I would be getting 12 volts to the accessory, and that wouldn't be good since it's only made to take 5. So I'm going to have to plug these into an accessory plug. See if I can read this better without the wrapping on it. It looks like it's, I'll put, oh, it's confusing. It says 9 volt to 12 volt. No, it's 9 volt, 12 VM. I don't know what that means. And then underneath it, it says 5 volt. I can't, 3.1 amps. So at any rate, I'm going to have these plugged into an accessory plug, which means there's no point in me trying to hide the wiring behind the dash, which is what I was going to try to do. And instead of working on that today, I am going to work on trying to install the carpeting in the rear of the car. So I got my carpet took it out of the box, after you get the box open, it says remove product from the box, lay flat, and pop contours back into place. I suppose they only mean the contours for the rear wheel wells, but it's hard to determine where exactly you need to pop them. And it says that there may be excess material on the outer edges. I'm not surprised about that. In some applications, it may be necessary to use old carpet as a template for console cuts. I don't think that applies on the 76. Fold new product in half from front to rear. Place in vehicle lining up molded contour to seat risers or passenger sides. Once fitted, continue installation. Roll product forward, making any cuts needed for bracket shifters and heater vents. I don't think there are any, but the only things that you have to cut out here are the bolt holes for things like seat belts and seats, things like that. Next, cut in center at firewall to allow product to go underneath dash, and this is already in 2 pieces up there, so I don't think you need to do that. Continue same procedure for remainder of installation, working your way to outer edges. Once product is properly fitted, you're now ready to do the final trimmings on outer edges, seat belts and holes, etc. Note, applying adhesive to hold product in place is generally not necessary. If desired, only apply a light brush or spray adhesive after correct dry fit has been obtained. So, I have my pieces laying out. That's the back. The fronts are on the other side. I can't get them on the video without moving the camera, so I'm not going to. And the other thing is they provided the 3 pieces that go on the storage compartments in the back. So since those are flat and I don't need to do anything to them, while I'm waiting on those other things to, as they say, relax, I'm going to see what I can do about getting these fitted into the cover for the lids for the storage compartments and the battery compartment, such that's back there. So when I asked my wife whether I should go with red or black carpet in here, she said black, but I didn't consider that this trim piece here needed to be, was going to be visible. So I don't know whether I'm going to paint that or whether I'll just have some other red trim, because there is going to be red trim all throughout the interior of the car. But I have to take these loops to pull up the doors and the locks off and get these circles out. And it looks like, and they don't give you any clue on how to do this, but it looks like here, these are almost melted in with whatever that is. So I'm not sure how you remove that. I might have to see if anybody's got any tips on YouTube, because my gut tells me that you probably have to drill those out. And this, oh, I just realized that instead of working with these in this entire frame, I can take the doors off. It's interesting because I can clearly see the seam on this one, It's right here, like it goes around. I clearly see a seam on this one over here. I cannot see a seam on this one. See, this one here there's definitely a seam there. So I guess the question will be, whatever attaches this back on, it's going to have to be flush so that it fits down in this frame without interference. So that might be a tricky situation to deal with. But for now, I'm going to start taking these off of the frame, taking the locks out, see what happens there. Okay, these things, the little loops for lifting them up, I don't know if they're standard or not. This looks like, and I think I recall having to actually put these on because they were missing or whatever, or at least not attached to the point where you could use them as a loop. So I don't know if that's standard or whether that's something I did, but that came off pretty easily. Now don't lock it because it'll be hard to get up. Now I can get my hand underneath it. And then there's a little screw with a little, it's a retainer is all it is, which, if I recall right, see that pulls off of there, and then the whole lock pulls out. And I'm going to put this back together so that I don't forget how it goes. And this one was missing. It kind of works to lock it. You can press on this and pull it up, and the ring here keeps it from coming out. It's not going to fall out, but I might try to fabricate or otherwise somehow make a retainer to fit that on there. Now, the 3 bolts that hold it on there, they are pretty small because this is a 10 and it's way too big. I'm thinking they're somewhere around a 6 or a 7, maybe even as small as a 5. So I don't know why I got metric on my mind, but because most of the stuff on the 76 is standard, but I pulled a 10mm wrench to take this loop, these nuts off. It worked, but they're probably 3/8. And I was comparing that to a 10 for the screws that hold the cover on. And it's probably a standard measurement 2. That would be a 1/4. Just had a thought about, I think I had to drill these screws all the way through. I think they were originally just a self-tapping type of screw, and they pulled that, so I drilled them all the way through and put nuts on the back of them so they would hold. So there, that's out now. I don't know what that's made out of, or it looks like it's been glued to it. Man, this is gonna be fun. So I'm not gonna take up your time trying to video all the things I'm gonna have to try to get this carpet off of here, because like I said, it appears to be glued on. The trim this one looks like it's all one piece. The other two have gaps in them. They're one piece, but they are split, so I guess you can wrap it around it or something. But this one doesn't have anything. So I'm gonna turn some music on and chill while I'm trying to do this, because this promises to be frustrating. And I will let you know how I got it done when I'm done. Or maybe I'll come back halfway through and show you what I'm doing. So far what I've been able to do is I have this, it's a Husky putty knife from or scraper from Home Depot. It's got a pretty sharp blade and it's a pretty rigid blade. So I got a edge under it and I started slicing it like this, slicing and tearing. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, is just try to get under this. There you go. Hope that's in the frame. I don't know how I'll get the new carpet under it, but so far, for this one coming out, it's not too bad. Should probably go get a razor knife and just cut that. So it's a little bit of a struggle, but with some persistence, I'm sure I'll get it out. There's half of it. Maybe I shouldn't say half of it. It looks like maybe I'm leaving a little bit underneath the edge, like it's tearing it off rather than pulling it out. Okay, I'm gonna shut the camera off and work on the other side and work on getting this out from underneath and see whether I have to actually take this layer off. That might be what I have to do. I can't really tell from here. What was working for a bit till it started to rip off is taking these bent tip needle nose pliers, getting as close as I could to the edge and just pulling it out. I think before I pull too far, I'm going to try to loosen it with the blade. And maybe I can pretty much pull it out. It's trying to rip there. That came out pretty good. Some of it, the carpet ripped off underneath the edge. Some of it pulled out, so I'm going to have to clean that all out for sure. And see if I can get that new carpet down under there. So that's the rough part. By rough, I mean the rough removal. It's not done, not ready for prime time. So I've been procrastinating about this carpet job for a long time now, using the cold weather as an excuse, and frankly this is one of the jobs I hate because of the trimming of the carpet, and it's not easy to cut. It wasn't easy when I did my 74, and I only did the front in the 74, so that cutting that I had to do there was mostly just putting holes in for bolts for mounting the seats and seat belts and such. And I tried to use a razor knife. It's not so easy to do with that. So I did some watching of a lot of other videos that people have put in, trying to find out what they used, and hardly any of them show them cutting the carpet. There was one that did use a knife similar to this, and what he did was he took it out and turned it over and cut from the back, which sounds like the right way to do it because you're not fighting through the strands of the carpet, you're cutting the backing, and that's the hardest part to cut. And if you're trying to go through the pile of the carpet and then cut the back, I think that's a little harder. And I think that's why, if you've watched a professional carpet installer, they have a knife that's got a hook on it, and they can catch the carpet in here and just pull it. And that seems to work really well when I've watched people install carpet in my house. Now the other thing is for cutting a hole. Well, I did see, although he didn't show him cutting it, I did see a guy had a pair of scissors laying in his car when he was talking about what he was doing. So I've got 4 different kinds of scissors plus a pair of tin snips that I'm going to try. And the other thing was making the holes for the bolts. And some people did it with this. I also saw one guy took an old 3/8 inch socket and heated it up and burned it through the carpet. That seemed to work pretty well. I saw a guy heat a piece of copper pipe up and just use it to smooth the edges where he had cut, but he didn't show using it for a hole, but I don't see why that wouldn't work too. Like a 1/2 inch pipe, make you a 1/2 inch hole, which would probably be fine for underneath the seat mounts. But what I was going to try before this was I bought these hollow punch sets from Harbor Freight, and it seems to be a fairly sharp edge. This seems sharp. Got to be careful when you're grabbing the thing so you don't hit it. But it looks like if you can line up where you need the hole to be, put a piece of wood behind the carpet and then wrap that solidly with a hammer, that might work. I guess an alternative too, although it'd be tough to do, is heat that up, but then it'd be tough to hold it. So I am going to try and do some measurements on those carpets that are covering the rear wheel wells, and try and do some cutting and try and make a video that actually shows you how to cut it. Now the maker of the carpet, ACC, and I forget what it stands for, they had a video out there and they were cutting it with scissors, but they had a much larger pair of scissors than what you can find in general. I don't know where they would have gotten them. And they had a hook knife as well. So based on that, I think, and I do have to go to Lowe's tomorrow or Home Depot and get something else. So while I'm there, I think I'm going to see if I can buy one of those, because it might come in handy for this project. It's probably not all that expensive. Okay, I am going to try to give you some information on how I'm going about trying to fit this thing in here, because that's something that nobody else had on their videos, at least not the ones I looked at. They would show you, okay, I cut this and I put this here, and that show you the finished product, but wasn't very helpful in terms of trying to figure out where to cut, what to cut, when to cut, all that stuff. So what I think I figured out is up here along the outside wall of the fender is where this part of the carpet goes, and then there's a hump in the carpet right about here to there. I'm going to try to pull this back. That goes over this hump. Okay? And then there's a flat spot here. Hopefully this is in the video. And a flat spot here. I'll move it in case that wasn't in the video, but there's a vertical piece here that the cover for the seatbelt retractor, and I'm not sure how this seatbelt retractor goes in, but we'll figure it out. But there's a part of the maybe that doesn't go that way. Maybe it goes this way. But there's a plastic cover that goes off over that and screws into this. So the carpet's going to be under here. This part of the carpet here. You have to make a hole, a slit for this to go through. And I'll move this carpet up to where you can see it better. Here's kind of the flat part that we were looking at. It's right about here somewhere. You need a slit for that piece of metal to come up through. Now, the problem you have with fitting it is because they give you excess carpet, you can't push it all the way back because it runs into the back panel back there. So I'm going to have to slit that carpet right along here a couple inches. And I'm just pointing here so that you know where I'm talking about, but it's going to be at the back there. And hopefully figure out where to slit it here and fold this piece and this piece back so that I can slide this toward the back so that I can figure out how to fit this front piece in, because there's a dent right here. Maybe it shouldn't be a dent. But it feels like this right here needs to end up. I'll have to move this camera again. So at any rate, that piece needs to come up here, and the edge of this gets tucked in this gap right here. Get this out of the way so hopefully in the frame. There's a gap right here, and the edge of this carpet gets tucked right here. So I am going to try to measure that back piece and slit it so that I can push it back further to get an idea of where I need to cut. First of all, this piece to make it shorter. I'm sorry, I've got it turned. This piece to make it shorter. And that slit in the back, and then the slit for that metal mounting bracket for the interior trim. So I'm going to shut off the camera while I figure out how to do that, and hopefully I don't make any mistakes. If I do, my gut feeling is that's so far in the back that nobody's ever going to see it. And besides, I have a speaker bar that goes in the back, and it's going to cover probably about that much of that carpet in the corner. So if I do screw up the cut back there, I've probably got enough coverage of that speaker bar to hide it. So my late wife, who passed away like 14 years ago from cancer, she did a little bit of hobby type sewing where she would make quilts and Christmas tree skirts and stuff like that. So she has a sewing box full of stuff, and there's a dress marking pencil that's light blue. I'm going to use that as my my chalk, if you will. Chalk would work if you don't have a dress marking pencil, but I'm going to use that to mark my cuts. Okay, that dress marking pencil kind of worked, but I couldn't get it to work while I was under there. So I brought it out and made rough marks. Now I feel like there's a hump here, and I feel like maybe it might have to go as far as that hump, but I'm not sure. There's no hump in the body back there. So I'm going to try some of these scissors and see if they cut this okay. And as usual, I'm in the way of the camera. So I'm going to just try to cut it 1.5 to 2 inches. It cuts, but not easy. Pair of my wife's sewing scissors. That works better. Try this pair of scissors. That works pretty good too. That might even be better than the sewing scissors. I feel pretty certain I'm going to just cut this piece off because, like I said, I've only cut in a little over 1 inch here maybe, and it's got to go maybe 3 inches back. So I'm going to just remove that piece entirely just to get an idea of, do I have to cut further? So far this is the winner. I'll try the tin snips. Nope, those don't seem to want to cut it at all. So this is a pair of Scotch scissors. I'm sure probably bought these in, it's just some kind of a general type store. Could be even a grocery store where I bought these. Those seem to work the best. So now I've got a notch, and really what I was trying to do is see if this part and this part are where they need to be, because if they're too short, I can cut further up here or down here. If they're too long, I can start, like I said, I got to go in about 3 inches, so I could start in here or in here to see how I can get that back piece lined up in there. So I'm going to take it and try and fit it, see how well I did on those guesstimates, because it's hard to measure back there. Okay, so that estimate of that cut turned out to be pretty good. Of course, as I knew, it is not deep enough because that whole thing needs to slide back. And near as I can tell, first of all, I'll point out how nicely that's fitted. Now the back is further away. I mean, the bottom is further away from the back than the top is, but I've got this slanted because this has to sit down. There's two things holding it up. One is I don't have a slit for that metal piece, which is right here. And two, this appears to be where this slants out, that appears to be made for that. So I think I've got probably another 2 inches to go. I'm going to take it out and maybe cut another 1.5 inches so I can fine tune my cuts. And when I get to the point where I'm pretty well identified that this is going to fit, I'll cut a slit for that and see how that makes it sit down for us. Now the other thing I haven't talked about yet is there's a loop here for the belts that hold the T-tops in when you stow them back here. And that has 2 screws, which are probably going to need 2 smaller holes punched in the carpet. And lining those up might be a challenge, but we'll see. For now, that's what I'm going to do. Make that gap a little bit, or that cutout in the carpet to fit around that frame. I'll make that deeper. So after the next test fitting, I determined I can cut this. This is the side furthest towards the outside of the car, up on the little hump. I can cut that maybe a 1/2 inch further because this was being folded up under. And then I can take another inch off of this, which is going to put me right about where the extra sound deadening is. So that's what I'm going to do. And then we'll test fit it again, and maybe, and I can go about 1 inch deeper. Maybe once I do that, I ought to be able to start thinking about cutting that slit for that metal post to go through. It's not going to cut with the tip of the scissors. You got to get it done near the bottom of it. So, time for the next test fitting. So I've kind of put the trim piece that goes in that side that covers the seatbelt retractor and all that stuff over there just to illustrate that when I make this cut for that metal tab that sticks up, that screw hole right there is what screws to it. So behind that is open, but in front of it is covered. So if I'm off, I want to be off towards the front of the car and towards the outside of the car on that cut, because I can enlarge it to bring it into line with this. And if I cut too much underneath, it's covered by this piece of trim. So that's how I'm going to approach this. I'm going to make sure that if I'm off in a way that the trim is going to cover it. That sounds like a reasonable approach to me, because I don't see any way of measuring that and cutting that accurate on the first time. If I cut just a slit in it and it's off, I can enlarge it, or I can enlarge it this way and move that flap up to get the metal support for that trim piece in the proper place on the carpet. Because I'm not sure yet whether that thing has to go towards the back some more. It may, but I won't know until I can get that down on the wheel well and figure it out. So I'm going to cut it, like I said, towards the front of the car from there, and make sure that if I'm off, it's towards the outside of the car, because that trim will cover it. And I'll be back once I've got that slid in there and a test fitting on that. Okay, I've got that fairly well lined up. I'm going to try to locate the holes for that hold-down strap for the T-tops for the pick, and just poke it through the carpet. See if I can find it that way, because other than that, it's going to be tough. And I think I have to punch it through that padding as well, so that's not going to be easy. I should take this out and see if I can, yeah, this isn't going to be an easy process, so I should take this out and see if I can measure approximately how far beyond this this bracket I have to go to find that hole. And I want to make sure that when I'm located, I've got that carpet in as far as I can get it. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this and clean it up and enlarge this hole over here, because that should give me a hole. Keep in mind this is all underneath that trim piece. That should give me a place to put the seatbelt retractor in, and then I'm going to have to slit this here somewhere to make this fit in this corner. But it's a slow process, but if you take your time and try not to cut it too much, that's probably the best way to go about it. I don't know how well you can see that, but what I've done is I've stuck the pick down through the hole and measured from the bracket and locked my tape in at that point. So now when I put this back in, hopefully I can set the tape back down right where it's at and probe with the pick and get it. I've also enlarged the hole at the seatbelt retainer, or seatbelt retractor, so that I can hopefully just put it right in, because the that big hole in the carpet will be covered by the trim piece. And I've got it too far towards the front of the car. I need to make it further towards the back of the car. Put that in there. This down here. Put my measuring tape there. This isn't easy to find. Let me shut the camera off because I know I don't have much battery left. It's also tough on the back, bending in that far. Find the hole. Did I go? Did I miss the entire? I think I ran the hole. Nope, I missed the entire ledge. So I know that the hole is further inboard than that, or outboard, I should say. Can't feel it with my fingers either. There's the hole. Now, do I have it in through the carpet correctly? And the answer to that is I don't believe I do. Anyways, the idea with this is once I get that through the carpet, I'll pull it out and leave the pick in the carpet, and that will tell me exactly where I need to make the hole. So I'm going to have to take that apart one more time, at least. But before I forget to do it, I am going to take a magic marker and mark the part I need to cut out to clear the storage compartment lid. So I'll be pressing this up against there, taking the marker into the corners of this here, and hopefully I forgot that was black under there. That's a red marker and it's not showing up. At least it's not a black marker. That might be easier said than done. Well, let's see what it looks like when I take it off. And I am going to trim just a little more from the back because this thing sat back further than I thought, but now I've got to re-find that hole because I lost it. There's the hole. Except too far over on the carpet. Hard to find that thing. There it is. That looks good. That's where I want to punch a hole for the that little strap retainer. So I'm going to try to pull this out without losing that. Pick there. Now that's only one of the two holes I need to put in there. After I get one in, I'm going to actually put the screw in. And once I've got the screw in, I can use I'll put the little bracket in, and I will be able to use that as a distance marker from this hole to find it easier. For now, I'm going to shut the camera off, see if I can see the... Oh yeah, the red showed up. The red showed up. I can cut that out as well. I think that's the pin there. The pick. Yes. Hard to tell through the lens of the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to mark that Fortunately, I'm going to have to punch it from this side because the marking won't show up on the black camera or the black carpet. But I will take and cut this out, and we'll be back to punch that hole. Okay, I'm going to try to show you this. I don't know how well I'll be able to do it. This has to go through this padding, this sound deadening, and through the carpet, so I'll have to hit it pretty hard. Kind of feel the punch. Is through. The problem is it's so small, it's going to be hard to find on the other side. It'll work better, I think, with bigger holes for like seat belts, but there's my hole. I'm going to put that little strap through it and a screw. Go try to find the next one. So I used a longer screw with the same thread to attach that bracket to make it easier to find the original hole that I lined that up with. And now I'm going to take my pick. And I'm going to use the bracket itself as a guide for the distance to where that hole should be. Proving to be a little more difficult than I thought it would be. Awkward position to be working in. It's at an angle, so it's not just, perpendicular to it. Got it in the hole. There. That's in the hole. Now I can take that back out again, make another hole there and put the correct bolts in, screws in, and the cutout for my edge worked pretty well. Maybe need to clean up one end here. Get my marker and mark that before I pull it out. And then that will be pretty much ready to install. Only took several hours. I'm going to do the other side off camera using the same technique since it works pretty well. And then I will come back with the installation of the back pieces. Okay. That should do nicely. I am going to clean up this little piece here. No sense in leaving that there, but not much to do there. Pull this out. Mark it, punch it. Oops, you gotta unscrew the screw that's screwed in. Make sure that pick doesn't come out of there until I mark it. And this guy will be ready to install. It's already getting late in the afternoon, so I'm probably just going to punch this hole and not even really install this today. But so again, I was going to mark it, but I left my marker in the car. I'm just going to mark that and punch it out like I did before. And this piece will be ready to install. Not going to video that because it's just more of the same. A few whacks with the hammer and I'll have a nice hole. So one quick lesson learned. I was using my bench over there, which is plywood top, and it was a little bit difficult to punch it through. So I put a piece of pine, just an old piece of a 2x8, underneath it, and it punched through easier than doing it on the plywood surface. The passenger side rear panel is mostly in. I don't know if I mentioned it the last time, but on that little clip for the belts that hold the T-cups in when you have them back there, I used that one longer screw and one shorter screw, the regulation screw, to align it. Obviously the longer screw to align it, and then the shorter screw lined up pretty nice. It only took me a minute to really get that in place, so that technique was worth using. Now I've got to put the seatbelt retractor in place, and it's got a bolt with a shoulder on it, so this doesn't really get tight at all, but it's, it gets attached firmly enough that it helps you in an accident. So that thing does flop around in there. A bit anyway. Seemed like I was tightening quite a bit before it got tight. But there you have it. The belt retractor is in place. It will get the top of the lap belt attached to the upper part of the roll cage that's built into the bird cage, as they call it. But this will get covered by that trim piece that fits all up in here. So that's it for the passenger side. I'm going to use the same techniques on the driver's side, and I'm not going to bother to video it. Probably show you the results when I'm done, or if I find any new tricks, which I don't think I need, during the process of installing it, I'll go ahead and make a short clip to show you that. So I've already come across an issue I didn't have on the other side. You see those wires there? One right there, it's actually a wiring harness, and the radio antenna wire go through the back wall. They are attached see, you probably can't see it very well, but right there is a clamp that holds those two together, and it goes down into the fiberglass, and it's in there tight. I know I didn't remove that whenever I took this apart. So apparently all those wires, they're all way up there. I know those were hidden. So apparently they just go behind the piece of carpeting, which is going to make it not fit quite as well as the other side, but that's the way it was from the factory apparently. I don't really believe that the carpet in here had been replaced because it was pretty sun faded. So the measuring and cutting will be a little bit different to get around those wires somehow. But that's going to be something to deal with. So I'm trying to fit this back piece in there. I decided that there's probably a good 3 inches too much up here, and it doesn't fit up into this back fender well near where the towards where the radio antenna is. And so I was going to cut some of that off, and in the process I found this cutout in the padding here, presumably for the wiring to fit inside there. However, I gotta say, I don't have a high level of confidence that it's right, because that right there is almost touching. So I think I'm going to have to work with that for a while before I get it to where I like it. But in the meantime, I'm going to cut that top piece so that I'm not fighting so much resistance when I put it in there. So I trimmed that piece off, and while I had it out, I made this gap wider so that the wire has a chance to fit under it. So we'll see how that works. Okay, so I've made some cuts. I just put a slit. Those wires, there's a hump there, and the carpet is formed over that hump, and those wires crossed right over the top of that hump. So I just cut a slit down that ridge in the molded carpet, and that worked out pretty well. The 3 inches I took off of the top part there was also a very good guess. Now what I'm going to try to do is to get that little piece of metal that sticks up where you bolt the trim piece on. I'll try to get that through the carpet. So the first thing you need to do is to push it over as far as you can, because it's going to rest up against that little hump, and that's where that, and I can feel that little stud here. I'm just going to make enough of a slit towards the outside of the car to fit that through, like so. And then I'll work with it some more. That might be fairly good right where it's at, but I'm going to have to enlarge it to get the hole where the seatbelt retractor bolts in exposed. And then on this front location here, I'm going to have to trim a little bit off to get it to go down into that. There's a gap right here for it. But I'm going to have to figure out how to work my way around this cable here too, because I don't know whether I can get the carpet under it. Maybe so. Maybe I can get the carpet under there. But I'm going to turn the camera off for now and do a little bit more of that trimming, but so far it's going pretty good. I think it'll look decent once I get it all cut out. But as I was working on the passenger side, what I'm doing on the driver's side is cutting it conservatively and then being able to enlarge the cut a little bit. But so far so good. So the other side is in. I'm kind of happy with it. The same techniques that I used on the other side worked well. Namely the pick to find the holes for those little hold band clamps for the T-tops, and trimming a little bit at a time. The one thing I guess I did learn here is it's easier. There's a part right here that sticks out this way. If you cut the carpet straight into it, that is a better option than what I did on the other side, but they're both acceptable. I mean, actually, it might be a little better than I had thought that it was going to turn out. So these bolts that hold the seatbelt retractors in have a 13/16 head on them. So, and I just looked at it. My one seatbelt here is maybe a little frayed. And eventually I might replace it. And it looks like you can just do it without removing any of the trim. There's one tiny piece of trim in the back here that would keep this belt from going through, and you can remove that and it looks like this would just slide out then. So I don't think you need to replace much. Now the other part is underneath the carpet in the passenger compartment, so I may regret not doing that now, but the other retractor is here. And in order to replace it, you would have to take the seat and move the carpet, which means probably taking the door sill off. But it's a job that you should be able to do in an afternoon, working pretty leisurely. So that took me with some stops for video and a little bit of delay with moving the camera around and stuff like that. So I finished the installation on the passenger side and did all the cutting, trimming, and completely installed the driver's side in about 3 hours, and that's with video in it. So to give you an idea of what kind of time you're talking, it's probably plan on a day for the 2 back corners. Maybe if you're lucky you can get the final back piece in. I'm not going to try it today because my wife will be coming home from work, and so I want to quit for the day. But that's it for the wheel well carpeting